Sort of humorous opening for everybody. I'm glad that I'm finally able to find a use for this augmented reality application, which so far has not benefited the organization at all. So, in keeping with the idea of embracing failure, I mean, this is not intended to be some dirge of a PowerPoint about what we did wrong post-mortem. Rather, a rather humorous sort of take on, I think, mistakes that we all make, mistakes certainly that I made, and I can own this one, and unfortunately we will continue to make. So really, I'm just hoping that a couple of us walk out of the room with maybe a slight inkling that you're doing something right now that maybe you should stop, or that you shouldn't start that project that you were thinking about. Let me tell you a little bit about the Sheridan Group. It has relevance to the application particularly. With the recent acquisition by CJK organization, Sheridan has 9 manufacturing sites across the United States. I think most of you will know us from Sheridan Journal Services out of Waterbury, Vermont. And that's where our journal services are based. But the software development is based out of our technology lab in Baltimore. Please come visit me anytime you want. That's where my technology organization is centralized. And with the recent acquisition of Pub Factory, we'll be hosting right out of Boston, downtown Boston. This is where these guys are based. 2,000 employees, but importantly for our audience, 65% of our revenue comes from the STM publishing market. So any technology which can relate print to STM and publishing and technology, Sheridan is very interested in, obviously. We're also very interested in investing in technology for the STM market generally, but it has relation to this application because, as I'll start to explain to you, the portrait of a failure. There are 2 similar technologies you may have already heard about, virtual reality and augmented reality. And today I'm going to be talking about augmented reality. So what's the difference? Virtual reality is sort of popularized now with those wraparound headsets. If you have young kids who have a PlayStation VR, they're kind of off staring at the ceiling with this thing over their head. That is virtual reality. It's a completely immersive experience. By comparison with augmented reality, which you use a mobile device, perhaps an iPad or an iPhone, Android. And augmented reality, when you look at some piece of content, for instance, augmented reality will superimpose over that through the camera view additional information. It'll augment what's being displayed to you with, information about what's on the page. So you might have information about the author. You could have multimedia. It could stream video. IKEA used this pretty successfully in 2013 when they launched their IKEA catalog. This was, I think, really the biggest and first use of augmented reality. 175 million copies were distributed worldwide, and this was smartphone compatible. And this was when I certainly was exposed to this technology. I flipped open my IKEA catalog and I got out my phone. It was literally magic. I was able to change the color of the thing on the page. I was able to go online and do things with it. I was like, wow, this is a home run if you're a printing company with technology, right? I must confess to that, first of all. So wishing to be first to the market with AR, because really nobody was in that space at the time, the Sheridan Group, me, green-lighted the product development of an augmented reality application. Okay. So 9 months later, September, we're ready. We have gathered a team of people together and we have productized something. We used a third-party source AR application. We wrapped it in Sheridan so it really sort of looked like our technology. We figured out how we were going to deliver it. We spent a ton of time thinking about how the rights for the media, which maybe like a video, would be changed as the media, over time, evolved, whether there was a legal issue we should be concerned with. And we spent a lot of time thinking about that kind of stuff. Sales and marketing were trained. We built demos, pricing. We had different tiered pricing, FAQs, sell sheets, training. You can read the slide yourself, so I won't bother you to read all of this to you, but needless to say, this was a big effort. We spent a lot of time on this. And yeah, when we actually came to launch that application, I think we definitely overthought that one. Certainly didn't recoup the expenses that we were looking at. So what happened? I thought, well, perhaps you're in the audience, you're listening to a technology person speak. Don't you guys have systems to prevent that from happening? Isn't there some kind of SDLC, software development lifecycle, that prevents that stuff? Well, certainly, we had portfolio pipelines that would groom ideas, and we did do that, and we promoted this because, you know, I was in love a little bit with the technology, but also it had direct fit to our audience. We felt like there was a ready market for it. So it got through that phase. There is no real safety net in the SDLC. There's no magic bullet. But what they do advise, and which we didn't do, was to find all the dead ends in a product as quickly as you can. So when you're building a product, you're really looking to understand, you know, which way to go as quickly as possible. People do soft launches. You know, people do minimal viable products. 5 years ago, perhaps most of you in the audience wouldn't have heard a minimal viable product. I can't even say it. But today, I would imagine most of you know what an MVP is. Maybe you're even working with MVPs. But Sheridan didn't do an MVP. Had we done so, it would have been quicker for us to understand that, you know, this was maybe not the right approach. Let's get to the technology itself, which I've referenced several times now. Gartner has, who's familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, by the way, just so I understand the audience a little bit? Okay. Let me just assume that nobody's familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, as opposed to you're all too embarrassed to raise your hands. So Gartner has a way of describing this phenomena where a new technology comes out and we all assume it will do everything for us. I think, you know, that's human nature. We just think it will change the baby and mow the grass. And then right after that, when we realize it doesn't do everything for us, there's this sort of trough where we go down and we kind of go the other way. We say, oh, you know what, that's rubbish. I'm not going to bother with that. Like Twitter, why would I possibly need that? So this sort of trough down here. And then finally, over time, it levels out. So in 2013, I looked at this and I saw that augmented reality and virtual reality had come off this trough. They were sort of, it indicates that they're ready for deployment. To me, it indicated that they're ready for deployment, okay, back in 2013. Let me just fast forward a little bit to 2016. So this is the latest hype cycle from Gartner, okay? And what do we notice about it? Well, augmented reality is still in the trough of disillusionment, okay? So these are relative terms, you know. It's like virtual reality has pulled ahead. It's in the slope of enlightenment, which is probably where you want to be if you're releasing a product on VR. But you know, it's sort of an indication that there are technologies that are forever in that sort of promising state that just don't happen. So you probably would be best not to launch your product based upon the potential of the technology only. Okay, I think that's the lesson learned from this slide. You know, if there's nobody in the market using that technology by which you can gauge its adoption and its use, you know, maybe you have a completely disruptive technology product, maybe you don't. So, you know, second thing for you. However, maybe it's just the audience. You know, maybe it's your intended use, and the technology is in fact relevant. So, 2016, I'm walking around in downtown Richmond with my family on vacation. It's my family on the bottom right-hand side, in case you're wondering. And so everybody is holding up their phones, and they're holding up that, and they're walking into walls, and they're, sort of they're standing in front of, you know, statues, just sort of doing this and like swiping around. What the heck is that all about? So you guys will remember that augmented reality really came of age when Pokemon Go was launched. Okay, just a couple of stats about that. 15 million downloads in the first week. 15 million downloads in the first week. That's 5 times the population of Ireland. 50 million US dollars gained in the first 20 days. Okay, you can consider that 3 weeks, right? And over $500 million in the first 3 months. Like, I could have had that product. Right? It could have been mine. One critical difference between maybe Pokemon and my product was that Pokemon's primary user group, males 21 to 27. Okay? People buying technology for journals applications, not males 21 to 27. So I think the sort of summary takeaway from this perspective was, you know, the technology may be right, it may be terrific, but is it right for you? You know, is it right for your audience? Who are you actually selling to, and do they need it? I think that's really what I gathered from that. Let me kind of move to some lessons learned and some conclusions. I really just had the the 3 or 4 points for us. As I say, it was going to be short and hopefully entertaining look at a failed augmented reality application. And the first one would be, obviously, fail fast. I think we will say this, but this is remarkably difficult to do. And I want to come back to that as a final point. But I think that we should be using MVPs, minimal viable products. You should be doing soft launches or things that allow you to get the product out in front of an audience without having to do all of the marketing collateral, all of the sales training, all of the operational aspects that you need to do for a full product launch in order to get out there faster. Reduce risk is number 2. So look at this as a process. Look at the fact that you're going to do an event as you might fail, and then what are you going to do? Okay? So reduce risk that first event is going to be the failure by, staying away from cutting-edge technology. Don't launch a piece of technology just for its own sake. Don't be first into the market. Be a fast follower. Unless you truly have something that's remarkably innovative. I mean, I'm not going to preclude the fact. Just for me personally, the chances of my success are greatly enhanced when I can see some kind of corollary there, even if it's in another market, that I could maybe bring into my market and add value to it. I'm really going to be much more likely to succeed with that approach. So reduce risk. And finally, know your customers. You have to understand the people who are buying your product, why they're buying your product, and what is the value of that product to them. And that's really fundamentally why you're building that thing in the first place. So let me sort of come back to this final thought that I mentioned. I'll step away from the microphone and I'll yell at you. So as I was putting this together, first of all, I want to thank Gabe for inviting us to do this. I've enjoyed working with everybody on the panel. Thank you. As I was putting this together, I was like, it can be a little depressing when you do the same thing over and over again. It's sort of self-defeating. Like, why did that happen? And I think we have to realize the environment we're working in. So I think it was Drucker said that culture will eat strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which means that you might have the greatest plan in the world, you're not going to be lean and agile. But if your organization isn't set up to support that, and if your organization is going to do something different, then you're going to fail again in the same way. And you're going to wonder, how did that happen? So you have to understand kind of where you work, who you're working with, and what the culture of the organization is in order to bring that forward. Okay? Thanks very much.